All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Town Hall. We're going to get things started. Today is Monday, April 27. It's a little after 7:30 p.m. We're here for our regularly scheduled Town Council meeting. First order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next, we have the roll call.
Council President McEntee.
Here.
Council Vice President Marin.
Here.
Council Member Bergner.
Here.
Council Member Alley.
Here.
Council Member Wedgemont.
Here.
Great. All members are present.
Thank you. It's going to bring us to item 4, approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Motion to approve items 4A and B.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item 5, interviews. We're going to take up these interviews in the order in which they're listed on the agenda. First up, we have Jennifer Kruger looking to be appointed to the South Kingstown Housing Authority. Jennifer, come on up.
Okay, I think this is on. Hello.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
You as well. First off, thank you for your interest in wanting to serve. This is a good opportunity for you to tell us more about yourself. We received your application, but anything you want to highlight or talk further on, you can feel free to do so, and tell us why you think you'd be a good fit, and if you've been following anything that's happening on the board, maybe you could touch on some of the positives or some of the negatives, and really just why you want to do it. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I've been interested in the board and the activities of the Housing Authority for about a decade, actually, because I work at the Johnny Cake Center, which some of you may know, and we have worked very closely with members of the community, some of whom live in the South Kingstown Housing Authority properties. However, for a long period of time while I was working at the Johnny Cake Center, I was also a direct service person, so it didn't seem appropriate for me to apply for something like the Housing Authority Board, because there might be a conflict of working with individual tenants and making decisions more broadly. So in the interim, I was still very much interested in affordable housing production in town, and I have been on the Affordable Housing Collaborative here for the town. That was from 2016 to 21, if I remember correctly. And so I've always had sort of an interest in trying to support good housing growth in town. I'm very excited about the $20 million that's looks like it's on the table for some new construction at the Housing Authority, and I'm very motivated at this point, especially now that I'm in a different position at the nonprofit where I'm not in direct service, to maybe support that cause, and would be happy to be on that board. I know the other 4 board members. I think it's a really important time, and I think I have some knowledge and skills that would be really helpful for continuing that progress.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks so much.
All right, next up we have Susan Axelrod looking to be reappointed to the Planning Board.
Hello.
Susan, welcome. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
It's a good opportunity for the council to hear your perspective on what's happening at the Planning Board. You can touch on any sort of projects in the pipeline or really anything you wish to talk about. We're happy to hear it. You know, we don't always have the opportunity to speak with boards and commissions. Planning Board is, a rather important committee, as you know. But feel free to just tell us what's happening, tell us about your experience, and the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, first, thank you very much for allowing me to come back and re-interview for this position. I love my position on the Planning Board. I take it very seriously. I have done everything in my power to learn every subdivision regulation and every ordinance, the shower of new rules coming down from the state and how that affects planning in town. I'm very thorough with plans and try to go as prepared as I can to meetings to contribute what I can to meetings. My special interest is in landscaping and planning, plant design. So that's sort of my niche. but I do my best to be as informed as I can for every project that comes our way. And we're working hard to make every project as seamlessly fit into our community and in the spirit of our town. I think we've got some great things going on right now. We're very excited about Old Tower Hill Road, which I think we finally have passed off, and you'll see that final ordinance coming up very soon. The planning board just finished that, and we've approved a lot of projects this year that we are proud of, that we've made, that we're proud to have approved and we think will be good fits for our town. We've made them as architecturally interesting with lots of good landscaping, good site design, and we've done our best to make projects we've approved this year to be the best we can for our town.
All right, thank you, Susan. Any questions? Good.
No questions?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. All right, next up we have Maria Mack, looking to be reappointed to the Planning Board.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Maria. Thank you as well for your service. A lot of long years, a lot of commitment, but well served, so we appreciate it. But again, we all know you well, but feel free to tell us here anything you wish to touch on, about your experience, things happening now, whatever you wish to touch on. Go ahead.
We've had quite a few projects that have been approved in the last year, some of them smaller, some of them larger. The high school project, the Champaign Heights project, which you will hear about this evening, as they have received funding finally from Rhode Island Housing. That's a huge project, and it's very different from what you normally see with the housing authority kind of project. It's innovative. It's going to make a huge difference. I would say challenges that we are seeing are not completely new. As Susan mentioned, the regulations that are coming down from the state create a lot of time and effort that has to be made by the planning staff and the planning board. And although every community is subject to that, some communities, because of the nature of the community, particularly the rural and suburban communities, it's a harder lift, and it's constantly changing. So we don't know from one year to another what the regulations are going to be or what our authority is going to be. Other challenges and opportunities are challenges with regard to water capacity, which I know you're discussing an irrigation ordinance this evening. Water quality is something that DEM this is not part of their jurisdiction, so they manage stormwater in terms of the amount and the flow and all of that, but not water quality. And water quantity, if you look in the comprehensive plan under the various elements, circulation, stormwater, environment, climate change, housing, those are all elements that are part of the comprehensive plan, which we have several goals and policies contained in the comprehensive plan. And every year we do it's now become a biennial work plan. And we try to go through that and see what we can achieve. Sometimes some of those things fall by the wayside because we have things come up that are immediate, but we have a lot of goals and objectives that we need to really continue to work on.
Thank you, Maria. Any questions from council members? Well, thank you for your time and appreciate your service. Keep up the good work. Last up, we have Armin Monaco, looking to be reappointed to the planning board.
Good evening.
Good evening. Armin, welcome. I know you've had a shorter stint on the planning board than the other two that were up here tonight. So tell us about your experience. How's it been? What do you see? What do you like? What are some challenges, some positives? Go ahead.
You stole one of my comments. I was going to indicate that I am the shortest serving member of the planning board, but the oldest member of the planning board.
And still a freshman.
Yeah, still a freshman, right. Serving on the planning board is, and I want to thank you for your vote last year, it's been a pleasure. My entire life has been consumed with not only my professional career, but serving in some capacity on behalf of the government. I started off in the military back in 1969, so that gives you some indication of my age. I eventually retired from the military a few years ago. I won't tell how long ago. But during my period of professional life, I served both in city functions and in state functions. So the focus of my life has been to partake not only professionally, but to serve the communities that I reside in. You've heard most of the talk about the projects. What intrigues me about South Kingston, though, is that it's a community of many diverse interests. They talk about the number of villages here, and those villages really have separate identities. So serving on the planning board presents an opportunity to make sure that the identity of the different villages are maintained. I'm also concerned about historical significances. I previously owned a 200-plus-year-old house, and we maintained the character of that house, even though there had been some modifications to it. So I enjoy serving on the planning board. I'm not going to go over a lot of the projects, as you're well aware, and my two predecessors clearly identified the projects. The one that I'm really intrigued with is the old Tower Hill project, but there are other projects that are coming into works that I think are vital. They're different concepts, and I think that really is a tribute to the town of South Kingston, that it has a multifaceted approach to how the town should be developed. And I'll entertain any questions if there are any.
All right, thank you, Armin.
Okay.
Any questions?
Maybe not a question, but Mr. Monaco's being excessively modest. He also served in the Judge Advocate General's office.
All right, thank you, Armin. I don't believe Paul Jordan is in attendance tonight. Okay. All right, it's going to complete our interviews for tonight. We are getting back to adhering to our internal policy of advertising vacancies for any seats on any board or commission. The last ad we're going to run is on May 1, so we're going to take up a lot of appointments at the next meeting on May 11th. So stay tuned on that. We're now going to move up. Go ahead.
So you don't want to make any reappointments tonight? You're not comfortable reappointing the three
Well,
planning
similar
board?
to how we did last meeting and the meeting before, any reappointments that had interviewed, we had decided, let's wait to receive all applications through the advertising deadline, which would be May 1 would be the last advertising, and then the first meeting in May 11, we would do a whole slew of appointments.
I thought it was because we had new applicants last week. We talked about we had 3 new applicants for the housing authority position. We knew we had one tonight, so we held off.
We had reappointments interview at the last meeting. We took this same position. I just feel it's good to be consistent in that. So we'll be taking up a lot of appointments at the first meeting in May, which is May 11. I feel that makes the most sense if we're going to get back in the habit of adhering to our internal policy of advertising the vacancies on these boards and commissions. It doesn't pose any challenge as to creating a vacancy on a board or commission, because I believe any time a term is up, that particular board member serves until such time that either they're reappointed or a board member is appointed to fill that seat.
That's correct.
Okay.
So you don't want to reappoint the 3 existing members of the planning
I'm
board?
telling you that we are staying consistent in what we did in the last meeting and the meeting prior, which is say on the record and actually act on that, which is let's wait till we've gotten through the advertising deadline, receive all applications for open seats on boards, and then make all appointments.
I mean, you can make a motion, Councilwoman, but for an appointment, but I'm in favor of what the president's saying at the moment, May 11th.
I wouldn't doubt that, so no problem. We'll wait.
All right, we're now going to move to Town Manager's Report, item A. We're going to move that up. I'm going to go to you, Jim Manny.
Thank you. Under the Town Manager's Report, we have 2 items, but one, we have Mr. Little here who's representing the Champaign Heights, and he has some information regarding the some grants he's gotten regarding the moving that forward. So, Mr. Little, would you like to come up now and please present what you have to the council?
Hi, good evening. Chris Little on behalf of the Housing Authority. So there were 3 times I came before you and asked you for a letter of support to Rhode Island Housing for funding. Well, your 3rd time was the charm, so thank you. Secretary Goddard at the Rhode Island Housing meeting on April 16th, when they approved our funding, noted the strong level of community support as something that she was really impressed by, and that didn't make the decision, but it was very impressive to her. So thank you. At that meeting, we received an entire package, which, coupled with other funding sources we've received, will result in approximately $47 million in funding, which pays the bills to have this project proceed. A large chunk of this money, more than half of it, comes in the form of federal and state low-income housing tax credits. The balance comes largely in loans, which fortunately the project will have a cash flow that can support significant loan payments, and some grants. And our schedule at this point is we expect it's going to take us until next January to be able to have the financial closings. There will be 2 financial closings because of the complexity of the transaction, plus a closing with HUD, and we will, in the interim, have to go through and complete all of the architectural drawings, which will take about 4 months, and then expect about a month of review from Rhode Island Housing before they sign off. So we, at this point, are hoping to be able to break ground as soon as the weather permits in the first quarter of 2027. Hopefully we won't have a winter like last winter, and we can move faster. So this is, it's a big deal. There are a lot of things we have to do. We have to do an awful lot of outreach with the residents, the neighbors. We have to come back to the planning, to planning to get our final approval, which should be done administratively. And we need, obviously, there's a few state permits, but those are fairly ministerial. So at this point, although it's a provisional appointment, it's just a provisional approval. There's just a lot of stuff that we have to get done between now and then to close. So thank you for the support. We are looking forward to it, and looking forward to making this change. And if there aren't any questions about the financial deal, on which it's a 15-page resolution of details explain the nature of the transaction. Then we have a brief PowerPoint that was prepared by Laura Lee Costello, which we are making available to anyone in the community who wants to understand what this project is all about. So,
I don't have a question about the financial part. I have another question.
Sure.
So a couple of meetings ago, we talked about David B. Champagne, Corporal Sergeant, added to the text so that the community learns that Champagne Heights is named for a veteran. And if we could start to just change the language, because it's always amazing to me that people think that Champagne Heights means something else. And so if we could work together collaboratively to honor his contributions, and maybe even in the language and in the sign, move that way.
Absolutely. Corporal Champagne devoted a lot to his country and to his community through his bravery and his sacrifice, and he deserves to be honored. And so hopefully when we are finished, you will see a project that honors him as well as honors the community.
Yeah, I didn't know if we could start just changing our language to sort of say Corporal David B. Champagne project, right? Like, because it doesn't, the connotation isn't there that it's named for a person and their efforts.
Well, we do anticipate going through perhaps some naming issues. We're not there yet.
Okay.
We've been focused primarily on trying to get something that's approved before we change the name.
I know, it's a tiny detail.
We agree with you that right now, too many people don't know what Champagne Heights really stands for and is intended to honor.
And the same thing with Fournier Estates.
Yes.
Just to sort of recognize the veteran contribution, it gets lost.
Okay, so if I can, if you have a couple minutes, I'd just like to show you, we'll just take a second. Jamie has the slides here. if we can just start on the first one here, we'll go through them quickly. This is just what will be distributed and available to our neighbors and residents in the community. So it's basically starting out describing our vision, which is really to change the whole feel of this site to something that honors the community, honors the residents in the community, and makes you feel like this is a place you want to live. And as we said before, part of it's going to be to honor Corporal Champagne. So the next slide, please. So we start out here. We started this project of trying to deal with the 52 dilapidated housing units at Fournier and at Champagne Heights. These have housed families, and this is the avenue to proceed, and that's where we started. We will be replacing those 52 family units. All the 52 families will stay in their existing dwellings until there is a new place for them to go. It creates some complexities in construction, but it's something they deserve. You have the next. And as you know, we are adding to this 33 units of what I'll call workforce housing, which is for families, primarily 2-bedroom, but I think there are some 3-bedroom units for people whose earnings are up to 80% of the area median income, which will allow many people in this community to be able to work in this community, to live in this community. And these units will be integrated into all of the units, so there'll be economic integration, which also creates challenges, but the long-term goal is to have a more sustainable community. Okay. So the project also, which we haven't forgotten about, when we have completed the construction and we can move folks from Fournier over to Champagne Heights, it's our intention to demolish the existing dwellings at Fournier, and at this point we think we have room to build 22, 24, or thereabouts, depending on how they're situated, 1-bedroom housing units, which would be available generally for people who either are downsizing or people who are starting out in their career, and we're still working out how they'll be used, but these would not be necessarily they probably will be capped at 80% AMI, but we're going into that process. But that is something that we have in the vision image at the end that we want to be doing. Fournier will not be a vacant site. So, as we say again, and this is what you see as a sketch. This is a depiction from the architectural drawings of the intention of this project. Is that we'll have a community that goes simply beyond providing housing. It'll be a place that you want to live. It'll be a place where kids can play. It'll be a place where people can feel safe. And it'll be a place where people feel like they can grow. Now, one other aspect of it that goes beyond, which is the next slide, which goes beyond the housing and was just a plus because we didn't think we could get it, is through a grant that was developed, it was initiated by Congressman Magaziner. We have funding now also to build a small addition onto our administration building, which is largely to serve the purposes of having a safe and confidential place where residents can meet with social service agencies. For example, we have a family self-sufficiency program, which we have at present, but you want to meet with somebody in a confidential setting to get the information you need to have to help them get their finances together so they can be successful. That will be one of the purposes. It will also be meeting space. It's not going to be big. It's going to be a couple of offices, a meeting room, a bathroom, and maybe a little kitchenette. But with that grant, we can add that service. So that is the overall project. Laura Lee added these terms at the end, which I think are really very much providing really the direction we're following. But I just wanted to share that with you because this is something that will be present for the community. And thank you again for your support.
Thank you, Chris. Go ahead.
Chris, you don't have to come back. I just wanted to say congratulations because it's what you did on third time's a charm, right? And this is persistent leadership from you and your team to really try to make sure this gets done. And I loved what you said about, creating a place where families can be at home. If you drive down Colonel Champagne Heights right now in the afternoon, you see kids walking around on the lawn, families hanging out. And I think that this is a really great example of persistent government. So congratulations, Mr. Little.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I want to echo that. Congratulations to your board and your staff. Cobbling this four-part project together and getting $47 million in the current funding environment is phenomenal.
Well, we're blessed to have a really great team, both internally and the two legal entities, as well as that we've been able to bring on board. And that team also includes our legislators, our council members, our neighbors, our residents. So thank you.
Great job.
Thank you. All right, that's now going to bring us back to item 7, the consent agenda.
I have a couple questions about the first consent agenda item. Pull that one off. The one at the door for the clerk's office. 7A. I can totally fine with B and C.
Motion to approve items 7, B, and C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to move us now to item 7A.
So just had a question, Jim, about the door. Did it break recently? Sorry, Mike. Mark?
The door definitely needs to be repaired, well, replaced, and it's the double door that leads into the clerk's office. But the question came up whether it was a security door, and I did not have that answer, but Mark Russo's here, the facilities director, and can answer that.
Yes, good evening. So we have capital money for that. We had put money away a year and a half ago for replacement of that door. It's a fire door, so that's why the expense is what it is. It's the double doors.
Okay, so it's not like an unexpected repair. It's part of the CIP we've been
CIP planning, yes, exactly.
It's in this year's CIP or last year's?
Last year's.
Okay.
It's actually, yeah, for this 2026 season, yes.
Okay. So we approved it last year?
Yes.
I just don't recall, so that's why I asked if it was broken.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. I know it has to be like commercial fire retardant, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and the windows will be a little bit larger, so you can see if there's anyone on the other side. So, and they're also steel versus the wood that we have there now. So,
I did look at it on the way in. It
Yeah.
looks kind of sad.
it
Sorry.
is, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Motion to approve item 7A.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. So I'm going to bring us to item 8, licenses. A is a resolution granting a miscellaneous permit to the National MS Society of Fairfield, Connecticut to conduct a portion of the Bike MS Ride the Road in South Kingstown on Saturday, June 13, 2026, from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., subject to the execution of a hold harmless agreement indemnifying the town. Application by Rupa Blackwell. Rupa?
Nope, I'm Maura.
Maura, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. We're here looking for a permit for Bike MS Ride the Road. It is a fundraiser on behalf of the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. There's about 1 million people living in the United States with MS. It can be a very unpredictable, debilitating disease, and this event helps raise funds, helps raise awareness. There's roughly 4,000 people in Rhode Island that are living with MS. This ride will be on Saturday, June 13th. Riders will have the option to go 25, 50, or 75 miles. We ride mostly in southern Rhode Island. And it's a great ride. This is our 39th year riding, so really looking forward to next year. We have a fundraising goal of raising $355,000. Pretty lofty. Last year we were able to raise about $330,000, so we're very hopeful to continue to expand. We've had some really good pacing and progress with people registering for this year, and looks like we're going to reach our goal. I'm very hopeful for that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
How many participants do you think you'll have?
About 300 riders, and then we also see about 50 volunteers that come out at the various rest stops and help cheer people on.
All right, any other questions from council members?
Motion to approve item 8A.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Good luck. Sure to be
Thank
another good one.
Thanks so much.
It's going to move us to item B, a resolution granting a miscellaneous permit to conduct the Run for Kerry 4-mile Memorial Road Race on Sunday, August 2, 2026, from 6 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. to the Carrie Lynn Bassett Female Athletic Scholarship Fund, Inc., of Wakefield, Rhode Island, subject to the execution of a hold harmless agreement indemnifying the town, issuance of a certificate of insurance naming the town as an additional insured, the amount specified by the finance director, and approval by the Traffic and Transportation Review Committee. Application by Kathleen Bassett. Kathleen?
Hi, good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you. We're here for our annual Run for Kerry. This will be our 23rd year. Doing this in memory of our daughter Kerry, who passed away in 2001 from bacterial meningitis when she was a freshman at LaSalle University in Philadelphia. We give out at least 2 scholarships a year at South Kingston High School in her memory. We also do books that we donate to the local elementary schools. This year we are donating to Matunic. I worked there for 30 years, and Mr. Andy, as everybody called him, passed away just before Christmas this year, so we're donating books to the library in his memory. They're going to do like something with janitorial custodian. He was a lover of the garden, so that's where this year's donation will go. We have been approved from the police department already. We have 2 ambulances that we have on scene. We have about 50 volunteers and 3 different water stations.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions from council members?
I just wanted to approve item 8B.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any discussion?
I just want to tell you how much I love you guys.
Thank you.
How much you keep the spirit of Kerry alive every year, and how much Matunic always will be behind you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Of course.
All right, we got a motion second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. Good luck. I'm sure it'll be another good one. Thank you. All right, that's now going to move us to item 9, public comment. At this time, I invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on any matter to come on up. We just ask that you identify yourself, and we're going to limit you to 5 minutes. When you begin speaking, this clock will begin counting down. And we're going to do a 30-minute segment of public comment. Once we get through that, we'll take up 2 public hearings, we'll move through new business, and then if you haven't had a chance to speak yet, we'll have another segment of public comment. So, Jim, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thinking of tonight's budget activity, just a few thoughts that I've had over the last month. My major concern is, many of you remember back in 2011-12, Governor Raimondo used that word arithmetic, which apparently most everyone in the state had forgotten over many, many decades. So I just grabbed a couple of my old school department budgets, just some comparisons so you can see that my concerns are well-founded. Back in fiscal year 2003, it's almost an even number here, $27 million in salaries, $9 million in benefits, 3-to-1 ratio. I think what you're going to come up with tonight, roughly 31 million plus in salaries, 15.5 million in benefits, 2-to-1 ratio. This is the same move the pension accounts had over 2 and 3 decades, from the 1980s, 90s forwards. A concern, hopefully, is in the back of your mind. I know you in that world, Mr. President, but it's something that is very concerning and may require a lot of changes in how we award our teachers in the future, especially them. A couple other things. If you read the paper lately, Joe Paolino, largest developer up in Providence, headline, Rhode Island should compete for growth and not tax it away. And here we are going after the rich, the wealthy, the high income. Under every cushion we're looking for money. It's just really disturbing. Mayor Smiley vetoed the Providence rent stabilization bill. If you talk to our developers, they're very upset. If you talk to anybody in New York, you know, if you can't replace what has to be replaced and you're working off a 4% property tax, that's going to do nothing but hurt housing in the long run. That's all it can do. And I know Mayor Smiley is going to hang in there as far as he can. Another thing, you know, we bring up tonight, Champaign Heights. I take a look at all these articles. Rhode Island housing bureaucracy, terribly bloated, and my concern is I hope Champaign Heights is a success, but I keep bringing up to you, and if you read the paper this weekend, front page, some of the key developers of affordable housing and low-income housing, audit problems, financing problems. declining tax treaties. We've got to think about this. There's no reason that this Champaign isn't off to a good start. But an audit, and as I've mentioned to you many, many times before, I don't know how we're going to handle Rhode Island housing and the cost it will be to educate the kids in there now, which have a treaty right now, I believe, with really no cost from the members of the Housing Authority. But you learn a lot by reading the newspapers here. State senators pushing a new police pension bill. Well, he knows it, and he's part of it. The Ethics Commission, no problem whatsoever. Ethics Commission is disturbing, and I think the senator knows what he's doing, but it just makes you feel that people have no say in this, that the people who are going to receive benefits in this are doing all the legislation activity. Very discouraging, but I have hope for us in the long run here, and hopefully you decide that tonight's activity for the budget you have to pass will take into account some of the costs coming up with us, and I know Brian's out in the audience tonight. I see $45 million of financing ahead of us tonight, and the 30-year bond today for a second hit 5%. So you can be guaranteed we're looking at 3.8 to 4%, depending on how they finance this bond, if it's going to be 20 years. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Jim.
Brad Harrington, Wakefield. Public comment for some. As I've said many times to you guys, every voice in this town needs to be heard, not just the ones with the D's on their back. What I witnessed the other night, this is the norm, maybe a little more than the norm. You usually see me and Jim, Doral. But to fill this auditorium with those school kids just has me shaking my head. That school committee, school department, should be taken to task for what they did to jam this hall, forcing us to leave and cancel the meeting. I come here, I ask for different things, and, I pretty much just shoot off the hip, not so much for Doral and Jim. You're polite at the end, you say thank you, and that's it. And that's as far as it goes. And I'm tired of that. I've asked for things. I've asked for you guys to get our leaders in here for a town hall meeting. We can't have that. That doesn't happen. I don't come here just because I've got nothing better to do. As you can see, most people don't come, except when it's for the school. And I've said to you before, you guys don't run this town. They run this town, okay? They put you there. They'll take you there, out of there. That's why I would never be able to be put on any of those seats, because that school department would never allow it. It's just infuriating to me that, we come up here with numbers, Jim, Doral, not so much me, and they're just ignored. I mean, they get what they want, they come in, they bring the band, they bring the kids, and at the end of the day, the things we bring up, this isn't 1996 anymore, when the town of South Kingstown arguably had the best school department in the state. That was 30 years ago. But their salaries are right up there. These pensions, as I said before, they're not sustainable. Who sits when they renegotiate this contract? I'd like to have a seat there. I don't want to be on the planning board, but I'd like to be on that board because I'm paying it. And that's why I'm so adamant about this. It's not just, I'm not against schools. We need the schools. We need good schools. But at the end of the day, the school department has to come in the reality of the rest of us out here that are paying these ridiculous. I had an exam the other day. It cost me $2,100 that I had to pay out of my pocket for that exam, okay? This contract needs to get into the 20th century, and I don't know how we do it when it's backed by Evergreen. How ridiculous is Evergreen? You talk about, the different sides of the aisle. Who would give them that? You can't. Now, you're going to raise the floor tonight. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's $1.5 million, and it can't go down. They have I've talked about it before. They have so many tools in their toolbox to tell us, bend over and take another one. Again, I expect results. And if I'm going to pay top dollar, I want these kids to be on the top of this state.
Thank you.
Good evening, Bob Traeger. I'm very tired tonight. I didn't think I was going to make it over here. I think if I'd have closed my eyes for a couple of minutes and watching the news hour, I'd still be asleep at home. But anyway, I had a very interesting couple of weeks and attended two of the school committee and your presence at that meeting, and I'm glad I went to both of them. The first one, I was disappointed, and I got up and I said a couple of words, and I was surprised. I walked up. I think I was the first one to speak, and it looked like nobody was going to get up, but they did, and I think the general thing I was commenting on in the beginning was the continuous barrage of these huge numbers, the millions, and they didn't get into trillions, but I mean, we're in the multi-million, this, that, and the other thing. There were some parts of it that I understand needed to be voiced, I guess, because of the nature of the meeting. But what I was very impressed with both of the meetings was the eloquence of the young people that got up and spoke. That was well worth my time being there, just listening to these young people. And some of the, what I call young people too, adults, teachers, parents. I'm a grandparent, and I am proud of however they got this knowledge. And they said a lot of it had to do with their participation in music and sports and other activities like that are critical for our social growth. But, okay, I'm going to leave it there for that. There's a couple of things there's so much going wrong. I mean, you know where I'm coming from, I think. I mean, the small mind that I have would never be able to encompass the disaster that our country is experiencing right now. It's beyond the pale of human experience to even contemplate it. But there's two things that's still happening and the way they're handled on the press is amazing to me. Well, about less than that, a couple of second thing. Well, now in the Pacific, these boats are being blasted out of the water, and that's all they say. Now it's just, that's okay. We haven't done a damn thing about it in this country. We're allowing our government to murder people where they have no reason whatsoever to do it. They even say it that way. They say it that way when they're giving the news media. Well, they're suspected of having something in them, so they blow them out of the water. Okay, that sounds like, hey, Bob, what are you worried about something as silly as that? Well, Bob is very worried about something as silly as that, because that's just one piece of a puzzle that we could be back where we've seen other countries very quickly, and I think we're on the road, to be honest with you. The other one thing that's been on my mind, listening to several commentaries about it, is what's going on with the voting in the United States. The games that are being played now, I've always been very happy with our community here, with how it's done. It's very fair. It's obviously not corrupt, but they're trying to do things to limit groups from voting. And I hope the people in this country just wake up a little on that one. There's a million things you can say. I mean, I'm not, my mind doesn't run that way, but, I can understand perfectly well why having an identity card would be a nice idea. But there's other ideas that are being voiced. Citizenship, proof of this, proof of that, with a lot of people that I know that have been here forever, young people, average people. I'm done. Anyway, voting, keep your eye on it. They're playing with it big time. People that we have no idea what they're doing. There's a lot of money out there doing certain types of things. And I hate to leave, but I'm going to leave today because I'm a little bit beat. But I enjoyed listening to these people that are serving this community get up. I enjoy being here, knowing that I'm in a good place.
Thank you, Bob.
Hello, my name is Fran O'Brien, and amongst other things, I guess, I'm business manager for RT Transportation. RT is a private contract carrier based here in Wakefield, Rhode Island. And what they do basically is for South Shore Village, those houses are being constructed at Fiore Industrial Park, and then RT moves them on flatbeds to the park. They're picked up by cranes and then put on and then finished off. We learned today that a local resident made a complaint about our company, and I'm told that, well, first of all, we heard that he contacted Chief Moynihan. We met with the chief today. That was helpful. We're told that he contacted the council. We're told that he contacted the Rhode Island DOT, and I only can imagine who else he bothered with. But I just wanted, there's always another side to the story, and I wanted to put that story out here. RT began in August 13th, 2019. It's owned by Tara Mulroy, who's my wife. It's also owned by Ron O'Brien, who's my brother. And Ron is a local resident. My wife and I, Wakefield residents for years. My wife used to own Tara's Pub down in Matunic. And I just want the council to realize that in the 6.5 years we've been in business, we haven't had a moving violation. We haven't had a citation. In that time, we've moved approximately 220 houses. There's only 27 left, I believe. But we've moved 220 houses. It takes 10 trailers, 10 trips to make a house. So that's 2,200 trips. And they're 20-mile round trips. So that's 44,000 miles we've logged. And in that time, no violations, no moving violations, no citations. And the only thing, and that's what this man's complaining about, we did knock down in that time, in 44,000 miles, we knocked down 3 mailboxes. In all 3 cases, we contacted the homeowner to let them know, sorry, we had an accident. In 2 cases, they asked if we'd replace the mailbox, which we did. In the third, he asked us to write him a check. We did for $505, which is a reasonably expensive mailbox, but that's neither here nor there. But I just wanted the council to know that if you read this complaint, there is another side to the story. By the way, this complaint happened today. We knocked his mailbox down March 11th of 2024. We wrote him a check on March 18th of 2024. But he saw us driving down the road the other day, and he was waving and everything else. And so my wife stopped and says, is everything okay? And it was not a pleasant conversation. But I just wanted you to know there is another side to the story. We operate within the law. We have all of our insurance in order. We have our registrations in order. We have a blanket permit to move our product. And there is a blanket policy, a blanket permit that is required by the state DOT, which we have. We've given copies to the chief, and I guess I just wanted you to know there's another side to that story. I think we're a local company. We're operating legally. We're operating responsibly. And why this man is upset, I'm not 100% sure, other than he wants us to use a different road. Well, I dare say there might be people on that road that aren't too happy about it. But what we've done for the last 6.5 years, we've used the same route. We come out of Fiore's, down Saugatucket, across Curtis Corner, out to Ministerial, right on Warden's Pond, and into the housing project. That's what we do every day. The other thing is, this is not a daily occurrence. In January, we operated 3 days. February, 3 days. March, 2 days. April, so far, 2 days. We are planning a move tomorrow. So I just wanted to hear the other side of the story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Doral Beasley. A week before the suspended town council meeting, the night, the overflow night, a week before I went to the school committee meeting, and public comment at the end of the meeting, I went up to the podium and I just said one thing. I said, you're going to go into these negotiations now and you're going to have the town council meetings, and please don't use our students as props and pawns anymore. So obviously that fell on deaf ears, not only in this chamber that night of the suspended meeting, but also at the 2 meetings in the high school, in the auditorium, filled with students worried that their arts, their music, and their sports were going to be eliminated. Okay, first of all, that's on you. That's on you as a council, and it's on the school committee. First, those items in total were $320,000 out of a $68.5 million budget. That's less than 1/2 of 1%. You just found them, what, $500,000 of pension you're going to give them? Not going to pay a pension, we'll give another $500,000. They're talking about taking $700,000 more out of their pension, not paying it this year, throw it in the old till. Okay, that $320,000 should never have been on that list at all, and you should have told them to take it off as soon as you heard about it. JV sports. You know what happens when you don't have JV sports in a high school? You think without JV sports, you don't have a high school anymore, because students, there are only so many students in a high school that are good enough for the varsity teams. If there's no JV sports, those kids have nothing else. So they're not going to stay in the South Kingstown. They're going to go to other schools. We already have sports today in South Kingstown, in our school district, that do not have JV teams anymore. I know we don't like to be compared with Barrington. Don't like to compare South Kingston schools with Barrington. Okay, this year, they have 80 more people than we do. 80 more people are working in that school district, and our benefits cost more than theirs. Theirs is $14.3 million, ours is $14.5. How is that possible? So benefits in Barrington are so benefits to salary, 35% of the benefits against the salary. In South Kingston this year, 45% benefits to salary. In the budget that they just presented that you're going to, I'm assuming you're going to approve tonight, it's 50% to salary. Those are insane numbers. This year we're paying $7,365 per full-time employee, more than Barrington. And you know what's on their agenda for tomorrow night? They're going to have a discussion on adding weight loss drugs. They want weight loss drugs added to their benefits. How about going to a gym? Go on a diet. Tic-tac. Last two things. Hardly a week goes by now. So I subscribe to, I know this is going to sound insane, I subscribe to, give me like 1 minute extra. I really would appreciate it tonight. I subscribe to the Boston Globe.
All right, Doyle, we're going to give you some rope.
Okay.
We're going to hold you to it.
Okay.
You can't just hijack the mic. There's more people in the audience who may wish to speak. Go ahead. Go.
It's not a big crowd. All right. I subscribe to the Boston Globe, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times, about 5 different papers. Not a week goes by now where I don't see an article in one of those papers about marijuana and the bad effects that marijuana is having on the people that live in this country, especially young people. I know at some point in time when they figure it out in Providence, you're going to be asked for a dispensary here or someplace to sell marijuana. I hope, I'm praying that you say no, that we don't want this crap in our town. Okay? We do not want it here. We do not need it here. And
All right, Doyle, let's leave it at that. We'll end it there. Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak? I invite you to come on up. We got time for one more before we move on. And then if there's anyone in the audience who hasn't had a chance, we have another segment for public comment. All right, we're going to move on now to the public hearings. Item 10. Item A is a public hearing continued from March 23, 2026 to consider proposed amendments to the South Kingstown Town Code, Chapter 19, Utilities, Article 3, Water Supply, Division 8, Penalties, and Division 10, Water Supply Restrictions. We have Rich Bourbonnais with us. We also have a representative from Veolia. We have our solicitor, Amy Goins. Rich, we'll turn it over to you to give a little brief, sort of similar to what we did the last meeting, but more simplified. I know there's also been some amendments, so we'll have our legal counsel walk us through that.
Yeah, in fact, the only thing I was going to discuss was that, you know, we were here last month presenting all this. You requested a couple of things. One was something to reference agriculture, and then I also believe that we looked at an applicable time period. We want Memorial Day to Labor Day, and those have been included, and that's the ordinance as it is now.
Okay. All right. Amy, we satisfied that the amendments reflected in the draft ordinance under consideration tonight takes into account what we decided to include at that last meeting?
That's my understanding.
Okay. Any other thoughts, questions? Good.
Amy, I read the amended version that's attached to the agenda. The language with respect to, I think it says yard irrigation, is that the right phrase? But Just to be clear, that's an agricultural exemption. That's the language for the agricultural exemption that we discussed?
The ordinance begins discussing applicability. So the first part of the first language of the ordinance refers to restricting the use of water for lawn and landscape irrigation. And then the second section on applicability includes the restrictions in this section shall not apply to properties used for agricultural operations. And then a reference is made to a list basically of, I'll say, certified farms that are recognized as farms by DEM.
Thank you.
Will I be able to set up a drip irrigation system in the community garden?
As long as it's not, hand watering is permitted. So watering by hand is permitted, sprinklers are not permitted.
So we're growing food for, Johnny Cake Center, it's an agricultural.
Well, exemptions hand watering of flower and vegetable gardens, so it does not,
Not going to drip.
Yeah, this is like a, 800 square feet garden. So we're supposed to water with a hose like every other day, or so drip irrigation is no good for agriculture, or?
Well,
The agricultural exemption, I don't think would apply to that because it's not a farm, but if the council wants to add an additional exemption for a community garden, you can do that.
Do we want to are you going on this topic? I'm going to go on something else, so go ahead.
I was just going to suggest, in addition to the one that Patty's talking about at Wakefield Elementary, we have the one where we're leasing land to the Kitchen of Hope for the same basic purpose, which is growing food for the public. It seems to me we do need an amendment to clarify that aspect of it. I don't know whether you would recommend that we call that part of agriculture or just make a specific exemption for gardens for public.
I think I would tack on to the farm-based exemption and also community gardens, and we could define that.
Right, because there is a big one at Champaign Heights also, and then the one at Broad Rock.
So if you can come up with a little bit of language for that, I'll sponsor that amendment.
Can you come up with that tonight, Amy?
Yes.
So what we're saying is you can have a community garden has an exemption, but not your personal garden?
Correct.
That's what we're saying, right?
For drip
irrigation.
For irrigation.
Okay.
So I have a suggestion, because I tried to explain what the ordinance is and the watering days. If we could include a table, so instead of having somebody read the text, it could be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, no watering, Thursday, and then the areas, so that it would be easier for someone to interpret, and there wouldn't be, because if you read it, unless you know exactly what it is, you're
so we do have maps that are associated with this, and the maps show where you can water, which days you can water.
Are they attached to the ordinance?
They will be included as part of the ordinance. They will be included.
Right, but you have to get to this section 10C, and then it's all big caps, little caps, initial caps. If you could just have a small table, because I tried to explain to a resident, my watering days are Monday and Thursday. Nobody waters on Wednesday. Tuesday and Friday is the other people. Why can't we have a table?
We can.
I think we can. I don't know that the code publisher may have the capability to provide complex maps embedded within the ordinance. I know that there are some kind of rudimentary diagrams within the zoning ordinance, but we could certainly have the ordinance reference a map that shall be kept on file with DPS and posted on the town's website, that map exists.
Yeah, but we do attach, within Muni Code, I believe we do attach the maps. So the map, I believe, would be an attachment. Am I correct on that?
I still want a table.
That's fine. No. The table, we'll work on a tabulation that shows, east of Moonstone Beach Road, you water on this day and this day, west of, and then we can certainly do that. That's not a problem. We'll include that.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, nothing. Thursday, Friday, nothing on the weekends, the times, so that basically I'm asking to make an infographic so that anybody who doesn't have reading level 8th grade or up can understand what this is, because
That's fine.
It's just a little challenging.
So I want to, sorry, Rich.
No.
I want to propose a question to the council about the community garden carve-out that we're looking at to make sure that we can sustain them, right? So on an equity level, I understand why we're doing that, but I wonder if that's excluding people that have their own personal gardens, that they give away food to folks, and I just don't see it as equitable to them. And so I'm wondering if anyone has any ideas so we can include everyone and make sure everyone that is growing food for them, either themselves or their family or their neighbors, cannot be excluded from using their sprinklers, and while making sure that community gardens can stay. I don't have an answer, I'm just wanted to point that out.
It's going to be dependent on how we define community garden.
I think it's up to the council. I think that's a policy decision for the council. If you want to allow irrigation of fruit and vegetable garden or herb gardens, basically anything that's not a bush or grass, I think you can provide an exemption so that people can use sprinklers to grow food. But that's a policy decision for the council, whether you want to provide that for every homeowner or just community gardens. I think it could lend, may present some enforcement difficulties if people are saying, I'm watering the tomatoes versus the rose bushes.
Any thought on that, Rich? Enforcement issues involved with potentially allowing exemption related to irrigation of food?
Because I have a garden, and I know that excessive irrigation will kill pretty much everything I have. So I think that it doesn't take as much as you might think to water a garden. It just doesn't. You can water a garden in an hour with a hose or drip irrigation, whatever you do, and it doesn't really use that much water. So I do not believe that it would show up on our data as excessive watering.
And my second question is so hand watering is fine still, right? Right, so I wonder if going forward, we could possibly work with Veolia for getting maybe some free hand watering carts so we can give out to our constituents for the summer. Something like that.
Well,
So
something to think about.
I have a garden, and I know, Patty, you're new to gardening, so I'm just saying that I don't think that it would be restrictive if you just followed the 2 days a week and then hand watered any other days. I think carving out something special and then trying to explain to other people why they can't do it, but you in your project could, is a slippery area. I love your idea, and it's not about your idea, but I think you can water a garden on the 2 days and hand water the other days if you need to. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, of course, it becomes more complicated when you have 800 square feet and you got a bunch of volunteers and a hose that is kind of tricky. We're trying to do a lot of, I'm just talking about my particular thing. We're sort of knitting it together without any money or resources, so we're sort of cobbling it together. I don't know, specifically about the garden at Champagne Heights or, because she's gotten a big grant for that now this year. So I just know that there are a lot of people engaged in the business or in efforts to grow food for community, including at URI. There's way more than just me trying to meet this need. So, and I know, Johnny Cake tells us that they have regular home growers that always bring in food. So people do it, and I don't know what the answer is, but I just know that it takes a lot to water a huge area like that with the hose. That's all.
I think, Jay, trying to answer your question, Rich points out correctly, I think that enforcement would be difficult to try and draw that line. Most people, at least my experience, when they have a substantial garden in their home, they're hand watering it anyway for the most part. If it's that big, they might, and they are giving the food away, they might qualify, depending on the definition of community garden, to get past that. So for most people who are doing the activity, I don't think it's going to be a problem, because they're probably going to be hand watering anyway. But if it's a large operation, then maybe we can find a way to have them come under the definition of community garden.
I think it's a good explanation. I do know, just off the top of my head, many people that have large gardens in like Matunic and stuff that give away vegetables all the time. And I think Patty's point is well taken on how many folks are growing food in South Kingstown, right, for other folks. But I think my question still remains, and I think as an equity lens, we have to look at that.
Amy, any progress on a definition?
Well, on the community garden issue, put that aside for a moment. If you want to add to the exemption for hand watering, which is watering without the use of sprinklers, if the council wants to add a drip irrigation system, I don't know if that would similarly be, low volume water usage, if that's something that the council wants to consider.
Well, on item D, we do have, exemption, hand watering of watering of flowers and or vegetable gardens. We could just simply say irrigating vegetable and flower gardens is exempt. And however that happens, it happens. I got to imagine there's most people, like myself, I don't set up a drip irrigation, but I could see how I could. It would still be fed from a hose, by the way. Or rain barrels, which I have those too, but yeah.
Right. It's just that watering, or maybe could it be like tied to the size of the garden? But that might be more complicated. I don't want to make it complicated.
I got to tell you that if somebody were spending the amount of money that some people are spending on their irrigation, it would be completely unfeasible to have a vegetable garden. It just wouldn't. The amount of watering that takes place for irrigating a lawn is way beyond what watering a garden is going to do. And again, from my experience, you water tomatoes too much, I mean, come on, they don't do well. So I mean, I'm just saying that if we just exempt irrigating vegetable and flower gardens, I think that covers everything we're talking about.
And it's still consistent with the whole purpose of the ordinance to begin with, which is trying to conserve water.
Underground sprinkler systems is the issue, and this is what this is trying to address.
Yeah. I think it addresses the problem, yeah.
All right.
For me.
Amy, perhaps some language?
So I would simply change, add to the applicability section. I think you can eliminate the exemption if you add to applicability after shall not apply to agricultural operations, just a sentence that says this ordinance shall not apply to food/vegetable gardens.
Flowers.
I feel like that is a really great decision for us to come to. As a town where so much of our community has thrived because of agriculture. I mean, we have tremendous land here, so I feel like bringing us toward a direction where everybody can grow vegetables is a really good thing.
So, Rich, what are you going to do if you come across someone who says, Hey, that grass I'm growing, that's my food. This is a food garden.
And it'll happen. You know, and we talked in depth today in the office, and you know, about how this is going to be enforceable. We've already, our water supervisor has already developed queries within our data to be able to define or to be able to at least see the higher users, and we're going to set a cutoff as to what we're going to investigate further. We're going to look to perhaps photograph, collect data, and we'll give warnings if we need to, but I think that differentiating between vegetable garden watering and you know, irrigation is going to be easy.
So essentially, if I'm understanding this, the change would allow any community garden to water any time they wanted using drip irrigation.
So what I've just written, what I'm working on for the council's consideration is a sentence that says, this ordinance shall not apply to hand watering, and then in parentheses, without the use of sprinklers, end parens, of flowers, or irrigation by any means of food/vegetable gardens. So you can water your flowers without sprinklers. You can irrigate, however, sprinklers, if you're growing food.
Because you're saying, Rich, that the amount of water that we would use, even if I chose to water every day, which I don't, but if I chose to, it would be not what you're seeing in these excessive use places.
That's right.
Okay.
So included in the draft ordinance that is under consideration tonight, item D, exemption. Hand watering of flowers and or vegetable gardens, meaning watering without the use of sprinklers, is permitted at any time. Doesn't that seem to accomplish what we're already talking about?
Yeah, so I would delete that and replace it with the sentence that I just read, which would be at the end of paragraph B, applicability.
Why is that a better structure of paragraphs in this ordinance?
Well, I guess right up front, the ordinance, you have the purpose of the ordinance, and then you have what it does not apply to. So when people are reading, they know, okay, if I'm a farm, this doesn't apply to me. I can stop reading. It doesn't apply if I'm hand watering flowers or if I'm watering by any means of food or food garden.
Still prohibited from hand watering grass on the days that are prohibited under the ordinance? Sounds like yes to me?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're not going to hand water your grass, but I mean, you could do the sprinkler and do a little bit, but you're not going to, again, the volumes we're talking about, right? It's got to run for an hour over an entire area. And we're talking about not 800 square feet. We're applying that kind of water to 10,000 square feet. It's a whole different volume.
And Rich, in previous discussions with the council, the initial enforcement of this ordinance would be, it's not going to be drive-by, correct? It's going to be based on looking at who's using the most water.
It is.
And then going out and I would think trying to educate first, right?
Yeah, so the first line of defense, and I believe it's in our ordinance, is 291, perhaps, where we're required to provide a notice saying, listen, we know what you're up to, basically. Well, we think we know, and then we may want to have a dialogue. And we do this on everything, by the way. I know people don't know they cut down a tree. It's in the town right away. They cut down a tree, and then we work with them. They talk with us. We maybe get a replacement, that type of thing. We do it all the time, and it'll be the same process. We're not looking to drag. I mean, if we were to drag everybody into municipal court on this, it would just be awful. And I'm not going to speak for Veolia's end, but.
And to Amy's point, the real purpose of this, when we started this whole discussion, was about getting people to pay more attention about conserving resources so that they're there for us, because 16 of the last 20 years, we've had to go to an odd-even system because of drought, and we're all in this together. We all want to be able to get water out of the tap.
Right.
All right, I think we're at a good place with this. This is a public hearing, so anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this, I invite you to come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes. All right, seeing none, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to amend the draft ordinance using the language that Amy gave us, assuming Emily can get it down.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Good discussion, everybody.
All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Amy.
So it will take about six months for that code to show up, right, Emily? Like for it to be searchable? When is your next
So, Amy,
update?
before we proceed, that motion there was to amend the ordinance. Now we actually have to take up a motion to approve the ordinance as amended.
I thought the council was making a motion to approve as amended.
That's what you said. Yeah.
To amend, okay. So then the council still needs to vote on it.
Oh,
Motion to approve the ordinance as amended.
second.
We have a motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
So just my question to Emily, when will they see this in the code?
So we do send in the ordinances once they're approved, so it should be within the next week. The Muni Code should be able to have it up, but it doesn't get incorporated into the full code until the next supplement comes out, which will be, I believe, on a quarterly basis. So I'm not sure, maybe October, I think, at this point.
But residents would be able to read the ordinance in about a week or so online?
Correct. There's a separate section on Muni Code and the Code of Ordinances that is for recently adopted ordinances.
Okay.
And I think it's fair to say, because this ordinance, is intended to restrict rights and carries a penalty, that the town can publicize the adoption of the ordinance through social media and other means.
Good idea. Thank you.
All right, it's going to move us to public hearing B, a public hearing relative to adoption of the town council's final fiscal year 26-27 budget. We've talked at length at several meetings regarding this. I'm going to turn it over to Town Manager Jim Manny for an introduction before we hand it right over to the Finance Director.
Yes, we have discussed this adopted budget at length. I'll turn it over to Brian. He'll go over the highlights of it, and then you can move forward with it or open it up to the public and let them discuss it.
Thank you, Jim. Before you, page 2 of the presentation is a brief summary of the budget calendar, remaining dates. So April, we're at the 27th, we're at the adoption. On the 12th in May, you have the deadline for a potential referendum, and the 15th is the deadline for the canvassers to certify if need be. In June, you'd have the potential referendum, the consideration on the tax resolution on June 8th, the possible referendum on June 9th, the tax assessor would certify the rates on June 15th, and finally, the final council meeting of the year, fiscal year, would be the consideration of year-end transfers and uncollectible taxes. This is on page 3, a brief summary of what is before the council right now. This is the preliminary adopted budget for all funds, which total up to $116,005,218. And I'm going to just go through a few proposed amendments that would be before the council tonight. On page 4 is a proposed amendment that would redistribute the currently budgeted retiree health and dental expenses for the town, zeroing those out and moving those funds to the operating transfers out for the school department. You see on the top portion, it's the general fund portion, so all the expenses are being zeroed out for the retiree medical and dental, and the funds are being moved to the operating transfers outline, moving it to $57.5 million. And on the bottom portion is the revenue and expense increasing on the school department side. That is a summary of Amendment 1 having to do with retiree health and dental expenses. On page 5 is a summary of the removal of the Narragansett cost share for the senior center. You see a summary at the top, the redistribution of the revenue loss. So the revenue the town had been expecting from Narragansett had been $68,731. Approximately 24% of that is being made up by the various other senior center revenue sources. And then the balance, 52,231, is being made up by a proposed increase in the tax transfer from the general fund. And then the bottom is a general fund transfer, increasing that tax transfer of $52,000. On page 6, proposed amendment number 3. This is reducing the amount of on the top portion, reducing the amount of the proposed interest or projected interest for year 2 of the bands by $201,000. And then on the bottom portion is reducing the same amount, $201,000, in the use of fund balance. We'll take this up a little bit later in the evening, but we still have about $20 million left in our year 1 of the bond anticipation notes, which is thus enabling us to reduce the need for next year, where we were projecting $120 million, now we're needing $100 million. And this $201,000 can now go back into the fund balance of the debt service fund that we'll be able to use later on when the actual bond hits in FY 27-28. Page 7 is in a summary of the health and dental expenses for active employees. The town had budgeted active employee dental at 3%, and dental came in at 8.47%, and healthcare we had budgeted at 10.5%, and that came in at 12.06. This is a brief summary on the top portion by the different portions of the general fund. You have a memo that details by department each of the changes. We did a brief summary here. And then you see the revenue offset at the bottom, which is the prior year taxes increasing by $104,000. And finally, proposed amendment 5 is the impact of the health and dental change for the other various funds of the town. The top being Community Recreation Center, which is a change of $1,055. Neighborhood Guild underneath at $1,494. Senior Center at $2,356. Solid Waste at $615. And finally, the Water Division at $2,330. Finally, on page 11, you see a brief summary. What the impact would be on these proposed amendments that are before you this evening. The school department budget would now result in an increase of 2.58%, or $1.6 million. Town budget, as previously noted, was an increase of 5.09%. Based on the removal of the retiree health and dental, that's going down to 3.69%. No change on the tax transfer, still at $963,000. The tax transfer to the schools is going up 2.82%, or $1,578,000. And no change on the tax rate at 909, or the assessed values at $8.8 billion. This is a breakdown of how we get the education support of the levy, which is now going to be at $59,091,000. And you just see the top portion. The top is the original maintenance of effort for the year. The increase in funding of $1.5 million. We're backing out the million for that was not going to be taxable revenue for this year. And then you see underneath the current year debt service and the adjusted bands debt service, where you arrive at the $59 million number. On page 13, not a lot has changed here. You see the one number that has changed, that total property tax revenue, $81,409,000. That had been $81,253,000. The change there is because we increased the budget for prior year taxes to offset the health and dental expenses. Beyond that, the real change here had been associated with the percentages. So previously the school had been at 72.01%. It's now at 72.58, and the town was at 27.99, and it's now at 27.42. So just a little bit of shifting of the revenue between the town and school with the shifting of the funds. But in terms of the current year tax levy, at the bottom, that number remains unchanged at $80,029,352. And on the next page is more of a breakdown, and that I'm jumping to that middle section. You'll see the estimated rate increase on both. It's really balanced out, where you see a 1.66% increase for the town and 1.68% for the school. I'm sorry, page 14. And the estimated rate distribution, you see the rate for the town at 2.49 and the school at 6.6. And then finally, all the way at the bottom, you see the levy is still remaining at 2.16. And again, this has really kind of balanced it out, where you see the town levy increase at 2.14 and the schools at 2.16. And then finally, on the last page, redistribution, once again, of these funds, where you see this would be the total all funds budget based on all of the proposed amendments. You see the town general fund at $35,280,000, down from $35,754,000, and the school operating budget now at $64,891,000.
All right, thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian from council members?
I think this is more a question for Jim. Going forward, both the town and the school department got tagged by Blue Cross and Delta Dental with substantially higher increases that also came in after we had started the budget process. Is there anything that the trust can do or the legislature can do to sort of force that earlier?
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, every community has been affected by that. We were given guidelines by the trust on what we should be budgeting for and then what they actually came in. This is the first year in the 4 years I've been here that it's gone up substantially where it affected, but it affected everyone. So the answer is, I don't know if they can come out early, but that is a question we should be asking so we can properly budget.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So, Brian, some of these increases to the school budget come from, I'm not sure of the right words, what? Some sort of transfer that's not, we didn't change the tax rate, but we're increasing the funding that's going to the schools. So, I know there's not a slide on this tonight, but the future debt of the high school is going to require substantial increases to the taxes, and some of this transfer isn't currently in the tax rate. So have you done projections about what 2 and 3 and 4 years from now will do?
Not as of yet. That's coming. It's been a long time getting us here. Should have said that was going to be my first comments when I started up here tonight. This budget process started in August, September, so hats off to all of you that we got here tonight. But I haven't gotten there yet, but that is next on the list. Once the budget gets adopted, we'll implement all the changes. We'll put the budget document out, the finalized version, and then we'll start analyzing and looking at next year and projections going forward. That's certainly on the list.
Because I'm just very concerned that the ultimate cost to the high school, it's not reflected in the school budget, it's reflected on the town side, correct?
Yes.
So the community is already paying, committed to paying and supporting the new high school project, but how do we pay for it when right now the schools can't even cover, don't have enough for what they now? So I'm just worried it's going to be a double whammy.
Yeah, I think going forward, we're going to need some planning ahead of time with schools to get a better idea
Exactly.
What their needs will be in future years, so we have a better idea of budgeting going forward. We received the budget on February 14th, and then we got a pretty good explanation on their budget on the first work session in March.
Right.
And, that wasn't that long ago. Here we are basically a month later. So
Right.
I think we need a little more earlier planning on this going forward.
I agree. And that's also something that I want to bring up is hopefully, Jim, at the next meeting or in a month, you can sort of present what would be ideal, for Brian in terms of planning. I felt like all 12 of us were agreement that we needed to plan. We couldn't just even add a work session. We needed to add maybe in the fall, really talking about how we're going to use our voices to advocate for change, to take action steps all over, and also to really not create a drama for $300,000 was the small amount. Doral's not wrong. That money is always going to be found. It's the other stuff that we need to work collaboratively on to solve those problems. So I just would hope that you would present in the next month. You're nodding. You will. Some ideal schedule.
Well, present in next month for the next year? I mean,
Just to be like, we met in December one time, and then we met in February and March, but we needed a work session, and when I said, let's have a work session, Kate said, we need more than just one work session in April. We need to be planning collaboratively, starting in the fall.
Yeah, one area of improvement I would say is that the schools and the town need to meet earlier. That is the big question. That's something.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we definitely are going to do that. I can't give any dates now, but I will say this: it's not from a lack of trying. We've tried, and we didn't get the information we needed, and we got it in short order, and we had to make some quick decisions. I'm going to make certain that doesn't happen next year.
Right, but I'm asking, do you think we need to meet in the fall? I'm asking the other people to the left.
I feel as though I never want to go through what we went through.
For $300,000.
I think it was a terrible experience, and whatever we have to do to avoid that and to get the information sooner, to open a dialogue, it just doesn't work to get the information on the day of the meeting, and we don't even have time to look at it. So I just want to make sure that we don't have to put the community through this again, and that we're not surprised with this again, whatever we have to do.
So the question was at the meeting, I think Kate said it couldn't be in April, we needed to meet sooner. So is it meeting in the fall, like in December, more in December? Or
I think we need to check in with them and see.
It just has to be meaningful meetings. If their financial information is not available,
I agree.
the meeting won't be productive. So maybe the fall's too soon. I mean, we have the meeting in December. I think that's probably too soon because they don't have their figures together as it relates to the proposed budget for the following year. But maybe more meetings in between December and April, the public hearings.
Maybe what should happen is after the election, the elected officials should meet, and that was, even though there's not a lot of information, what can happen in November, December is preparing for legislative advocacy. I mean, we really need to push on transportation. We really need to push on the funding formula being changed. I mean, Governor McKee at the EMS ribbon cutting said that we needed to be talking to him when he was setting up his budget, because I had asked, why did you cut our funding? Because we needed that. And he said, you're asking at a time that's not helpful. You have to ask in the winter. So maybe we need to set ourselves up as whoever is the group of 12 to begin to advocate for positive change. Because we're really going back to the same community when there's a lot of money that's left in Providence that is ours in some way.
Agreed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do want to talk about my perspective about this recent budget and also give you a few flowers during your handling, Mr. President, of this budget negotiation. This budget that was originally proposed to us by the town manager was level funded, and it was argued up here to level fund. But members of this council voted to increase education funding by over $1 million as opposed to keeping it level funded, which other people wanted to do. And working together with the school committee and the school district, Mr. President, you did a great job at leading us into a place where this town council is investing in education and really setting the tone for the next few years. And I agree with everyone up here that says that we should get together with the school committee earlier. I also agree that it should be meaningful, and I'm looking forward to this budget being approved.
I think earlier meetings is the base of what we need to avoid another repeat of this year. But I think it's three parts. One is planning for the following budget year. Second is oversight about what's going on this year. We've talked about shared services. We've talked about issues with the CIP on the school side. And then the third aspect of it is advocacy. The meeting schedule that we have is what the charter set up 20 years ago. And I think the budgeting process has simply become much, much more complicated because of the funding sources for the schools, the funding sources for the town, and the general difficulty of reaching that consensus under the constraints that we've got.
One of the areas of improvement that I saw was there's a lot of redundancy in our reporting. For example, 2 public hearings back to back, we're saying the exact same thing in case someone forgot to show up the night before. When in actuality, talking to the solicitor, we could actually get away with us doing a public hearing and the school's doing a public hearing. That counts for 2 right there. This way it would free up more time for us to gather information that was pertinent to the true budget and how it was going to be. But I do have to say this for the record, that we've asked, this year I think was a learning experience for the school department as well. As Brian stated, we were given their budget in short notice. What does that mean? It means we didn't get, the reason I level funded the budget was for one reason. I did not have the information from them, what I needed to see how much they needed, when they needed it, and why they needed it, more importantly. So it came down to that it was level funded because we needed more information and we were not getting it. That's the bottom line. I've said it before. So this year we're going to try even harder. We're going to have meetings before, and we're going to try and get all the information we need to submit a budget with their proper needs long before we got it this year.
So, Jim, one of the things that that I really appreciate about the way that you do the budget is that we are given an explanation of everything down to $1,000. And so that's sort of what we are used to seeing, whereas that's not what we received. And so that's something that I think I would like to see more of.
Brian, I got a question for you. As to the $700,000 plus of OPEB contribution that the schools will likely be reallocating to general operations in their budget, do we need an amendment to reflect that? It's a yes or no. You can just go yes or no.
No.
Okay. And then my second question is, I understand that the OPEB contribution is controlled by the town, so do we need to vote to give the school committee authority to forgo that OPEB contribution?
I'm not sure. Do you?
So are you speaking about our OPEB contribution or
Not
the
not
schools?
ours. I'm talking
The
about
schools.
their.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I asked when Mike Ursillo and I were talking about this way back, the answer was that you would have to vote for your contribution, the 580, I believe it was, but the 760 on their end would have to be a recommendation by the schools, not a vote for them. That's their money that they can, at the end of the day, can really do what they want. But we would be making a strong recommendation, and with the understanding that we will give the 580 if they give the 760. That's how I understood it.
Okay.
And at some point, I talked to Mike about that as well, and I think, I could be wrong, but I think the phrase was reallocation. And Mrs. Vetter, second night of the public hearing, made it pretty clear that that's what the school committee was going to take up.
Yes, I think that was the correct word, reallocation.
All right. There's no other questions from council members. This is a public hearing. So anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this item, I invite you to come on up. We just ask that you identify yourself. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes. All right, seeing none, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve amending the preliminary budget in accordance with the April 27 memo submitted and attached to the agenda from Brian Sylvia to the town manager.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Now we're going to take up the budget as amended Do I hear a motion to approve the budget as amended by the motion just casted? Go ahead.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim and Brian, for all your hard work on the budget and finding all the extra money that helped the schools out.
All right, it's going to move us to new business. Item A, a resolution to continue a work session relative to the proposed development and implementation of a homestead exemption program in the town of South Kingstown to a future date. We were supposed to have this scheduled tonight for a work session. Some other things came up, so that naturally couldn't occur. Jim, go ahead.
So I requested that it be continued because we had 3 items that we were going to have a work session tonight, as you stated, but we did have 3 items in executive session that took precedent. So I am respectfully requesting that the discussion regarding the homestead exemption program be continued to a further date. It could either be the 11th, May 11th, or May 26th.
That's Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah,
is that
25th
Tuesday?
is the holiday, so the 26th would be the town council meeting.
I prefer the 11th.
All right. We have anything scheduled for the 11th at 6:30?
I think we're going to have some executive session stuff, but pretty much the packet is done. We just have to explain to the council on what some of the options are. So we could do an executive session from 6:30 to 7, and then from 7 to 7:30 go over the work session for the homestead exemption. I think a half hour would be more than enough time to explain to the council to see if there's further direction or what you want to do with it at that point.
Go ahead.
So we just passed the budget, and we didn't amend any of the elderly tax abatements, so we didn't allocate any extra money for that. So we had talked a lot about trying to adjust even for COLA. So where's that money going to come from? Oop, here comes Brian.
I think that could or would be addressed when the tax levy is addressed in the first meeting in June.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian.
So in light of that, why don't we'll schedule it for the 11th from 7 to 7:30. If we have an executive session, which we probably will, we'll do that from 6:30 to 7.
Motion. Do we need a motion on that?
Do you need you want a motion, or we're good? I think we're good here.
I'm good unless you need to.
No.
All right. The work session will take place May 11th, 7 to 7:30 p.m.
Correct.
All right, it's going to move us to item B, discussion and potential action continued from March 23rd, 2026, relative to installation of a speed camera in sidewalks on Kersey Road. We have Chief Moynihan here tonight. We have Rich Bourbonnais as well. And we have Lori Orton, the resident who initially brought this to us at that meeting.
Good evening.
And at the same time, we'd like to consolidate communication items 14B and C with this item. 14B is an email dated April 7, 2025 from Cynthia Harney in opposition to the installation of a crosswalk on Kersey Road. And item C, an email dated April 10, 2026 from Cynthia Harney requesting traffic safety measures on the school zone on Kersey Road. All right, Chief, we missed you last meeting. You're really the most insightful person on this issue as it relates to traffic calming measures, particularly on this Kersey Road, which is adjacent to Peacedale School. So feel free to just
I
dive right in.
apologize that I wasn't here 2 meetings ago when this issue came up and for discussion. But so I want to give you a little bit of background. As in November, end of October, beginning of November of 2023, we had a company come in, do a speed study for us in our school zones. So we did all the school zones throughout town. You know, I'll speak on Kersey Road because I think that's what we're talking about here. What the study did at the time, it was October 30th to November 3rd over a 5-day period. Looking at the Kersey Road area and looking at a speed of 20 miles an hour. You set a threshold with the speed cameras, and typically what communities are doing are 11 over. 11 over would trigger the civil violation. What happens is a camera is monitoring the traffic that goes through. They're calibrated to detect what the speed is. If our threshold was 11 miles over the speed limit, it would generate a list of plates, registrations that were in excess of that speed, over 11. That list would be provided to the police department, where the police department would certify those vehicles. It goes through a vetting process. The company themselves runs the registration, matches the picture that the camera captures to the registration that's listed through the DMV, ensures that it's the same. So in Rhode Island, where we have multiple plates, we have commercial plates, combination plates, passenger plates, we'd have to make sure that the vehicle that's captured is actually who we're talking about as being violating the speed. The list then gets sent to the police department, where we would do another set of vetting of the data. Once we certify it, at that point, the company would process collecting payment on it. So notice is sent to the registered owner of the violation. As I said, it's a civil violation. It's a $50 fine that is assessed to the registered owner. This is only can be permitted in the school zones in Rhode Island. So the state law is school zones only, and then also with the local elected officials to pass whether that's going to be permitted in their communities or not. So when we had the company come in November of 23 in Kersey Road, what we found was that a fair majority were in excess of that 11 miles over the speed limit. So the 85th percentile was 33 miles an hour. So if we put the speed limit at 20 during the school zones, that's 13 miles over that 85, out of 100 vehicles, 85 or less were traveling at that speed. So during that 5-day period, just Kersey Road alone, to talk about volume, there were roughly 23,000 vehicles that passed by the counters at the time. And out of that, when we put that 85 percentile at 33 miles an hour, it identified close to 8,000 vehicles that would have been in excess of that 11 miles over the speed limit. So fair majority. And in the other school zones, really, we saw the same results. We came back and looked at it in June of 2024 with very similar, just the volume was a little bit higher, but the 85th percentile was still at 33 miles an hour on Kersey Road. Recently, we have done another study on Kersey Road, again looking at the speed. Slightly lower, 32 miles an hour is the 85th percentile on that. To kind of go back to it again, it's a 25 mile an hour zone, but 20 during the school hours. If cameras would be something that would be put in place there, obviously there'd be notice. The company would handle all of the signage, social media posting of it, advance notice. There's a period that many communities go through where there's a warning period, so we might have it where it's in effect for, say, a month. In the first month, there's just warnings that go out, and then tickets that would follow from that. Trying to think of any questions so far as we go through this?
Good.
Do you have any historical data on accidents, injuries, pedestrians, bicycles?
On Kersey Road?
Yeah.
I don't with me now. I know just really off the top of my head, we've had I can't think of any pedestrian crashes on Kersey Road themselves. I think if we had any, it would be very low speed crashes that occurred. I can't think of any significant ones in the 4 years that I've been here that we've investigated.
Chief, that period of time you identified where 23,000 vehicles traveled through, what was that period of time?
That would have been a 5-day period. It would have been October 30th to November 3rd.
5-day period?
Of 23.
And of that 23,000 vehicles, more than 8,000 were over, what do you say, 11 miles per hour?
About 8,000 were seen as being, that would have been in that speeding range of over 11 miles an hour or higher.
And if the speed camera had been in place, those persons would have been, I don't know, picture taken, the plate, or however you described it, potentially?
Potentially, I mean, if it was in effect that that's what our threshold was 11 over, they would be, and that the vehicle that was captured matches the registration. We wouldn't certify if we see that, you know, the vehicle is say a blue Ford, but the registration comes back to a red Honda. Obviously, that wouldn't be a certified one. That would be one that would got captured, but isn't someone that we would be sending notice to.
Now, let's just assume that we did move forward with it, and we did set the speed limit at that in that certain school area. 8,000 tickets in 1 week. I mean, that is a lot. That seems excessive. That would certainly clog up the municipal court, don't you think?
It could. Yep.
And that would certainly,
again,
change the attitude of the people in town.
It would start with an education piece that cameras are here, and we've seen them in other communities that I think it's very important to have that period of time, whether it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, as a warning period to say that this is a school zone. It is going to be monitored by cameras, and violators will be captured and tickets be distributed at that. So I think that's very important to make sure that that advance warning goes out before we ever instituted any type of program like this.
In this area that I'm identifying here, the 23,000 vehicles, of which 8,000 plus identified in a week, that's just Kersey Road?
That was just Kersey, yes.
So if you factor in all the other roads that pass by a school, this really adds up fast.
Yes.
And I think that really, I'm not too familiar with the cities or towns that are not urban that have this in place. I know Providence, I know Pawtucket. Other than that, I'm really not too familiar what cities or towns have it. In my opinion, I don't know if it's right for a community that's a suburb like South Kingstown. I understand that there's certain traffic measures we want to calm, and I know we've looked at several different ones, and now we're looking at this. Is it your recommendation that this is the best traffic calming measure available?
No, I wouldn't say it's the best. This is one measure. And again, this comes up again where we looked at this in 2023. It was based on a recommendation that we look into it. We brought our findings to the school committee. I think there's other ways to enforce speeding in school zones. This is one tool. And as I said, I wasn't here when this got brought up 2 meetings ago where it was raised as far as the speed cameras. I'm just bringing you the data that what we've collected.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
So I have a quick question, not about cameras, but about traffic calming. Someone had asked me, what if we made that one way? Just that road one way, would it make it safer, and could we do that and then send the people around by Tilecraft, that way through?
I mean, there's several things we could look at there, and obviously, I think when you come to that intersection where you could go North Road or you take the left onto Kersey,
Yeah.
we're seeing a lot of traffic that's going through that's commuting. It's going to the university, and so there's 2 ways to get there, and so if we did limit that, could potentially make that area safer for the schools, for the school that's there. I think a lot of other parts of it is the education. We do have every fall when new students come in and they're living off campus and now they're commuting through there's an education piece to that. During, late spring, we have tourists that come into the community while schools are still in session. Obviously, this wouldn't be in place during the summer months.
Right.
There's one other point on that. In my experience, when you divert traffic one way, you've created traffic issues on other streets.
Yeah, I
So
know.
traffic is like
Safer.
water. It's going somewhere. Unless you shut down, you cut down the number of vehicles coming into the town, which is nearly impossible. So if you make that one way, I can guarantee you're going to clog up 2 or 3 other roads with traffic and speed and so forth. There's one other factor in your decision is that the chief and I discussed the administrative cost in the event we did go to policy of school traffic cameras. So, Chief, the amount of FTEs that would be needed and the administrative costs and overtime.
I did check with other communities. Warwick is probably the one that has most recently gone to it. They have I'm not sure exactly how many numbers they have. I mean, the amount of school zones they have in the city. The administrative costs that the manager is speaking of is that vetting portion, is that if we get a list and there's, say in this instance, it's not even if we get to 8,000 cars in the 5 days, say it's 5,000 cars, that list comes to us. There has to be a decision that takes place as far as certifying that. Now, you may not be checking all 8,000 or 5,000 cars that are on the list. You might do a sampling of it. What it's telling you is that, you know, if it's a $50 fine, the company is taking a percentage of that. If you don't collect on the $50 fine, you're paying the company, still getting their share of it. So as an example, it's $50 and the town gets 40 and the company gets 10. Everyone that we certify, they're getting their 10, but we may not get our 40. So that's something that you have to take into consideration, is that you know, there is going to be an administrative cost that goes along with it. Some communities are doing it. They're paying for it with the amount of proceeds that are coming in.
Right.
Chief, thanks for walking us through this. Just as a policy decision, I'm in favor of better traffic patterns on Kersey Road. You know, we've had constituents come in and talk about the lack of a sidewalk, the lack of traffic patterns on this. I would be voting down any proposal for speed cameras today. I'm happy to be walked through in the future of any sort of policy we want to go through, but I'm specifically against speed cameras, especially tonight. I'm happy to be persuaded in the future.
Chief, you mentioned that there are some other traffic calming measures that we might consider, and I wonder if like speed bumps would be possible at all, because once you go over a speed bump and become airborne, and you know, it usually is a good teaching tool when you leave your transmission on the ground.
Team speed bump here.
Those things we could look at. Again, you're looking at a school zone, you know, so buses that are traveling on it with the speed bumps and you know, the complications or challenges that can happen because of that. You know, just to touch upon it as well, this is one tool, you know. I think having an officer stop a vehicle and having the education piece of when someone is speeding, there's a lot of value to that, and maybe goes a lot further. This is a tool that, as you can see, there's 7,000 vehicles or closely 8,000 vehicles out of this 5-day period that were identified that would be in excess. I mean, an officer can't go and stop that. You know, if we took one morning that we had an officer out there and they stopped one car, the stop is going to occur in the roadway while school is trying to either come in session or leave. You're going to have a cruiser blocking the roadway, a car that's blocked in the roadway, buses that are trying to get around it. You can see the difficulties are with it. There are some areas where the speed cameras are worthwhile, and others that, you know, I think it's something that just has to be measured and decided based on what the situation is.
Just one last quick follow through. So you said that the speed cameras wouldn't be activated in the summer?
They would only during school time. So in most communities, they'll run till 6 p.m. because of extracurricular activities afterwards. But again, that could be something that this council would decide on, what the time frame. But by the state law, it has to be while school's in session.
I mean, to be honest with you, I wouldn't want them to be installed without it being in the summer, because I think sometimes people are driving in the summer is the most, you know, they're the biggest violators. And again, like, you know, our schools are using the summer too sometimes. So
Chief, sorry.
Just to go, but you could program, just to clarify, you can program it to be 7:30 to 9, Monday through Friday, and 2 to 4, or
Yes.
whatever it is.
You set it however you
However
want
we wanted.
Yep.
And it could be September to June.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, you'd cut out holidays, you'd cut out times when school was on break. You'd eliminate that. That's all the programming
Right.
within the system itself.
And the downside, if you set up a police officer on Kersey Road, he pulls over one person, he creates all of that to stop one car one time, when there could be 5,000 cars in that same period going
Correct.
fast. Okay.
Chief, did I understand you to say that the state statute says not during the summer?
It needs to be while school's in session, so I
while
suppose,
school.
yeah, you could look at it to say if this summer school, that, a community could pass it during that time period.
And the context of this is, Kersey Road, the reason we're discussing it is because of the proximity to Peacedale Elementary School.
Correct.
Have you got data similar to the data you talked about, the traffic study, with respect to the other schools?
Yes, yeah. I do, and okay. It's much worse of a problem in the other areas than Kersey Road. When I look at it, again, if we go back to 2023, Broad Rock, we saw on Broad Rock Road, over 70% of the vehicles traveling were in excess of that 11 miles over. 80% on Old Kingston, Old North Road, I'm sorry. So looking at the charter school there. Ministerial Road, it was over 90% were in violation over the 11.
How about Stony Fort?
Yeah, we did not do Stony Fort. No.
Matunic Beach Road?
75% from Matunic.
All right.
So what's your professional recommendation?
It's a tool, it's a tool that will send a strong message. It has in other communities. I don't, the discussion about it being a money grab and things like that, I don't see that. I think it's effective. Whether you're using social media signage to say this area is monitored by speed, it makes people check their speed. We can continue to do what we're doing. We put on additional patrols and try to get them out there.
But eventually, Waze learns that there's a speed camera there. So if you have Waze on and you're driving on Kersey Road, it would say, pay attention, speed camera in use, just
Right.
like it has all the way down everywhere I go, right? It tells me.
Just more awareness.
And then it makes people make a different decision because they know that there's a speed camera. So we may not get lots of tickets, but we may change behavior.
Right. And I'll continue to what the manager talked about is the traffic's going to go someplace. If we put the speed cameras up in the school zones, you may have an increased speeding on North Road then, as people are going. But we can focus on that. Right now there's an option to go two ways. The law allows for communities to adopt this technology if they see fit.
I would just prefer to have a tool to use that is slowing down speeds 365 days a year, not 9 months of the year, personally.
Well, Chief, appreciate the update.
Okay.
I think at this time it's fair to say we do not have an appetite to instill or move forward with speed cameras in school zones. Not for closing the idea completely. Certainly as we try to tackle different traffic calming measures, we know that it's there. We know you have data to support it. But I think we should just continue to look at different options, particularly as it relates to Kersey Road. We seemed at the last meeting to be at a point that was close to potentially having a crosswalk, but I don't think we're going to quite get there. But I think we just have to continue to work through options and help resolve these problems that the residents are perceiving.
May I ask how this got on the agenda? Did it come from Jim?
2 meetings ago, we continued it because Chief Moynihan wasn't here. We needed him here.
Yes.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, thank you.
All right, it's going to move us to item C. Mike Stack, come on up.
Good evening. Before you is a recommendation for an award of bid to do some stormwater management work and some site work at the Lake Avenue right-of-way. If you recall, we have installed kayak racks down there. Recently, the Facilities Department completed that, and with cooperation with Parks and the Highway Department, they were able to get those in place. Part of the CRMC permitting that we ran into with this is we had to do additional work with invasive species management, stormwater management, and some native plantings. So this is an award for that stormwater management to reorganize the site as needed and to install the native plants as required by the CRMC permit. And the resolution would be to not exceed $32,000 funded through the American Rescue Plan, the ARPA funding that was reallocated at the last meeting, and it would be subject to the minority business status verification of D'Ambra, who is the sole bid for this.
All right, thank you, Mike. Any questions from council members?
Motion to approve item 11C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Mike. It's going to bring us to item D. Brian Sylvia, come on up.
Brian's favorite topic, the bands.
Good evening. Before this evening is the authorization of year 2 of bond anticipation notes for an amount totaling $45 million. That is in addition to the $55 million that was authorized last year. It is projected at this time, I have a summary on this, that similar to last year, the interest due would be just under $4 million, $3,988,889. That is at a 4% interest rate. However, similar to last year, we'd be getting bond premium back, which they'd be fronting us some money that would go towards that interest, totaling just over $1.1 million. Adjusting that to include the 4%, that makes an effective rate on the interest rate to 2.7%. And that's where, again, the interest was projected at just under $4 million. We'd be looking at 1.1 in the bond premium. So the amount owed on interest next year, as noted in the budget that was just adopted, of $2.8 million, or $2,850,000.
All right, thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian?
Brian, if you can just explain for the benefit of whoever's watching what the bands represent in terms of the high school project.
Sure. So the bands are bond anticipation notes, and that is the town is borrowing funding up front to cover the cost of construction on the high school project. Once the project is complete or significantly complete, we can issue the actual full bond itself to cover the cost of construction. I should note too, the signing of the bond anticipation notes would be set for June 22nd, which is again a council meeting similar to last year. We could have bond council come again and go over that. And our rating call with Moody's is scheduled for the end of May. I believe that was the 22nd of May.
Great.
All right, thank you, Brian.
And you had mentioned earlier that there's still $20 million from the first band, so is that why we're borrowing less right now?
That's correct, yes. Yeah, we had anticipated by the end of May being spent through we had anticipated being at $53,500,000 spent through the end of May, and we're currently projecting to be around just under $34 million. So we're about $20 million under, and that's necessitating the need, the reduced need on the year 2 of the bands.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to approve item 11D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Brian.
Mr. President, could you mark me in the affirmative on item 11C?
Clerk, let's make sure we mark Councilman Wedgemont as voting in the affirmative on item new business 11C.
Thank you, sir.
All right, it's going to move us to item E. Mark Russo, come on up.
So before you today is a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute a change order for the painting and exterior rehabilitation of the Kingston Free Library The original contract was funded through ARPA for $167,613. And this is from Martone Service Company of Narragansett, Rhode Island. What we found was some unforeseen rot. Mainly it was on the bell tower and the back part where you can't see it. So when they got up there and were power washing the building, we found a lot of, it's actually very heartbreaking to see. A lot of the pictures are in the, on the agenda as an attachment. So, so the change order for that is for $49,723.39.
All right, thank you, Mark. Any questions for Mark? Do I hear a
Jim,
motion? Oh,
this is the same company that did the EMS station?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Motion to approve item 11E.
Pardon?
Oh, I made a motion, I'm sorry.
Oh.
No, I didn't hear you, Mike, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I wanted to recommend to the council that, particularly given Mark's memo and the photographs of what needs to be done, this is an important matter. The Kingston Free Library at one time was a floating capital for the state of Rhode Island, Capitol building, and it was actually the building where Rhode Island ratified the Constitution. So we need to preserve it.
And if I could add, it was also the town hall, going back to before this one, before they moved everything into Wakefield. Little Rest was the center of town.
Great.
So
it's not appropriate for this meeting, but there's also a story about the Tavern Hall Club and the ratification of the Constitution,
True.
but that'll be after the meeting.
Right.
Should we have a town council meeting there at some point? Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you before Mr. Vice President gets really awesome information. Motion to approve item 11E.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Right, that passes. It's now going to move us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It's now going to move us to item F. Item F, G, and H deal with resolutions authorizing the town clerk to advertise for order of notice, but a few of these, I think, have some particular interest. So I think we should hear from the chief on item F.
So item F is a proposal for an ordinance, a new ordinance to bring underage, really to a tool for us to utilize for underage drinking. So we continue to respond to many complaints. It's almost on a weekly basis of large parties or gatherings, mainly from the university, off-campus housing situations. Currently, when officers do encounter underage drinkers, then they're potentially charged with possession of alcohol by a minor. It's a misdemeanor violation. This proposal would put it as a violation that could be heard in municipal court. So it's another alternative that the officers could use to be more effective when responding to the parties without necessarily inflicting a criminal history on someone as a misdemeanor violation. Because currently what would happen is possession of alcohol by a minor would be summons to the district court as a misdemeanor. This proposal would be consumption of alcohol by a minor. We could summon someone to municipal court, deal with it right here within town with either a fine or community service. It wouldn't result in a criminal history.
All right, thank you, Chief. I got a question for you.
Sure.
Under the current structure, so if you're charged, you go to district court, does the prosecutor have the discretion to amend the charge down to a civil fine?
Not to a fine itself, yes.
But it's still a criminal offense?
It would still be a criminal.
Okay. Whereas if we pass an ordinance essentially allowing for this to be under the jurisdiction of the municipal court, it would be civil in nature, no criminal offense on the BCI.
That's correct.
Of a particular person who engaged in such activity?
Yep, it would be
So
dealt with
this is
strictly
good.
civilly as a violation within the municipal court.
This is good in the sense that it doesn't put something on someone's record that could be detrimental to them as they move forward in the future.
Correct. And this mirrors, Providence has a similar statute. Narragansett has a similar statute. So this would be being more in line with those communities that have college-aged or populations that the law enforcement is dealing with these types of parties in their communities.
Okay.
It's a more effective tool that we could utilize.
All right, thank you, Chief. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Chief, just briefly, I'm sure this is probably just protocol that you are putting in there, but on item or section C, the odor or presence of alcoholic beverages upon the breath of any person, is the odor typically in there as the prima facie?
So what that'll allow is not necessarily its consumption, so it wouldn't be that the officer would have to see someone actually drinking. And many times at the parties, you're not going to see that anyway as officers approach. So
Right,
it would be
but-
looking at it to say the odor of alcohol, the presence of alcohol being enough.
Okay, I just probably have a problem with the odor as opposed as in the language itself, right? The presence of alcoholic beverage, absolutely, getting a ticket, going to municipal court, right? I think that it's, and that's why I'm asking the question. Is this usual for protocol to
Yes.
use odor?
Odor for something similar in this statute where we're talking about consumption.
Right. So let's say some college kid goes to a party. He's 20 years old. He gets jammed up by going to a house party that gets broken up by the cops. And he got a beer. He's walking around a party of 400, this darty, and there's beer flowing everywhere. And he gets soaked. The cops come. He's like, "Where's your ID?" And the kid has not been drinking or anything like that.
Right.
But he reeks of alcohol because he's surrounded by it all.
Right. It would be more than that, though. It'd be, consumption would be the facts that alcohol is there. He does have an odor of alcohol on his body, whether it was spilt on him or not. Maybe he has a cup in his hand, or, it would have to be more evidence than that of just the smell itself.
And that's why I'm asking specifically the question. It says specifically
It would be
the odor
part
or
of-
presence, right?
Part of support of that charge.
Did you have a question?
The person who received the summons would still have a right to trial in the municipal court, where the police department would present their evidence and the defendant would be presenting their own testimony and any evidence, and it would be up to the judge to determine.
I think that's fair. No, and I
I think it would just be one piece of it. I'm not saying that, in your scenario that you gave, I wouldn't say that would be supported on a charge.
No worries. And I think I agree with the president saying that setting this to municipal court, not making it a civil violation is great, right? So, thanks.
Amy, just to ask the technical question that I think's already been asked, the ordinance wouldn't create an irrebuttable presumption.
Right, it would be evidence on its face that the police officer could use in determining whether to issue the summons. It wouldn't be determinative, and nothing would be determined if the defendant exercised their right to trial.
All right, and Chief, the other part of this is, you mentioned other cities and towns have similar ordinances. Do I understand correctly that it's essentially one more tool in the toolbox, because you still have the opportunity in some cases to do the district court
That's correct.
prosecution?
Yep, and it would be a summons, not necessarily taking someone into custody and presenting them to district court.
Thank you.
And I think it's fair to say that in an appropriate case, the police department, if it's appropriate to charge, say, the parents or the owner of the property with the social host law, which is criminal, that would still be the charge. This would just be, again, as you said, another tool in the toolbox.
Just a question about body-worn cameras. Do those go on when you arrive at the scene of the darty?
Yeah, all interaction with the public, body-worn cameras are activated by policy.
Okay, so we would have that video evidence of every interaction of the police officer and the community member.
That's correct. That would be evidence that would also be supporting whatever the charge is.
Could be helpful or not helpful, right? But you always have it.
Correct.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve item 10F.
Second.
11F, sorry.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. We have item G. We're familiar with that. Feel we can just take that up.
Motion to approve item 11G.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. We have item 11H. Jamie Rabbit.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening. With regards to agenda item H, I don't want to oversimplify it, but we have a request to amend the zoning regulations to allow restaurants with non-alcohol service in our industrial 1 zone. We formerly had this regulation, but when the state law changed that required every special permit to have specific criteria, if you didn't have those specific criteria, things could automatically get approved. The planning board made a decision to remove some of those items. One of those was restaurants in the industrial zone. So in essence, a landowner is asked for the planning board to put that back in, and they have supplied specific criteria associated with restaurants if they were to be permitted in an industrial 1 zone. So, and again, this is just the request to do the order of notice, which requires a public hearing to be held by the town council.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions? Go ahead.
Just one, because I understand this is just procedural, but the agenda item specifies without alcohol sales. Can you just address why that's carved out?
So there's 2 provisions within our zoning code: restaurants with alcohol sales and restaurants without alcohol sales. In this instance, the landowner was only proposing to change the regulations for an IND1 associated with restaurants with no alcohol sales. So.
Do we need, well, that's why I'm asking the question. Do
There's
we
this-
need to look at how the zone itself covers the situation, or are we going to be back here again later?
You're going to
if
be
somebody
back
else-
here during the public presentation. Their legal representative will be here explaining everything to you.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the single property owner. I'm questioning whether we need to look at it sort of more globally.
We will give you everything during that public hearing process of all the zones in town that are IND1 and what the potential effects are.
The one owner, I think that's a no-brainer, frankly.
All right, any other questions for Jamie?
Motion to approve item 11G.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Sorry, it was 11H. Sorry, I'm so sorry. 11H.
All right, we have a motion to approve item 11H.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
So I'm going to move us to the town manager's report, item B. Jim Manny?
So we have 2 remaining items, well, 1 remaining item that's listed, but one the council requested that I add on good energy for an explanation of, I believe, what was said in executive session, and you wanted to brief in public on it, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
In a simplified manner, to the best you can.
I'll give you a brief synopsis. So in 2023, the town entered into an energy aggregation program with several other cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island. Mark, was it 8? How many are in? 8 now. Yeah, so it's 8. And the goal was to have an option for the residents to purchase energy from an alternate source other than Rhode Island Energy, which was higher than good energy. And so, once again, the goal was to simplify, is to save money for the residents on their electric bill. That plan worked up until recently. And so about 6 weeks ago, we were notified that, the town was notified that the good energy prices, starting in the period of mid-May, are going to go up substantially compared to the Rhode Island Energy fallback price, last resort price. And that's a first. That was not anticipated, but it came. So what does that mean? It means that the cost per kilowatt is going to raise from up to 13 cents per kilowatt versus approximately 11 cents per kilowatt with the last resort Rhode Island Energy. So after speaking to the council, briefing them on it, and speaking to the CEO of Good Energy and the CEO of Rhode Island Energy, the bottom line is this. At least for the next 6 months, possibly a year, anyone who has electricity through Good Energy, they would be paying more than the last resort price for Rhode Island Energy. We have 9,250 customers in this town. So after briefing the council, has come to the conclusion that we need to give our residents an option to opt out of the program individually. So over the next few days, we'll be planning through my office with Mark Russo and my executive assistant, Jess Spence, to come up with a social media plan to let the residents know exactly what I just said, only in more detail, and also for a mailer to go out. But that mailer might not go out for maybe another few weeks by the time the printer can get it there. It will have instructions, very brief instructions, to the point instructions on how to opt out if the resident chooses to do so from Good Energy, go back to Rhode Island Energy in the last resort plan, which will save them approximately 20% in their electric bill. So that's a very brief, simple summary. More will follow over the next couple of weeks through social media and written correspondence.
Thank you, Jim.
Second item we'll talk about very quickly as well. It's just an update on the 2026 property tax sale. So I'll give a brief summary, and if you have any other questions, we can answer it. So taxes are a part of life, and that's just the way it is. Some people choose not to pay the taxes. Some people forget to pay the taxes. The bottom line, for property taxes and wastewater and water, that if you do not pay, the town has the ability to put your property up for sale. It's not something that the town enjoys, but we're looking for compliance to the highest degree, so everyone pays their fair share. We started out with 32 properties that were on this list of residential real estate taxes owed and for wastewater taxes owed. We are currently down to 16 properties. So there is a property tax sale scheduled for June 4th, 2026. In the experience I've had here in the past 4 years, we're able to whittle that number down to very low numbers. Once some people just didn't know that they didn't pay their taxes, whether it was a death in the family or something like that. So we will do our best in outreach to get that number down as low as possible, and as a last resort, the properties that either refuse or do not pay those taxes would go to a tax sale on June 4th.
Thank you, Jim. All right, so now I'm going to move us to public comment. Anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak yet but wishes to on any matter whatsoever, I invite you to come on up. We just ask that you identify yourself. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes.
Lorraine Miller-Horton. I have a procedural question, and I'm just puzzled about a couple of things. I'm not sure if you're allowed to answer them or if there's another way I can get answers. But the discussion about the speed camera really bothers me. The council president, only one member expressed any opinion about it. And the council president then said, it appears that the council doesn't have an appetite for this, so subject is closed. I was very disappointed not to even see a vote, much less hear from any of the other council members. And I don't understand how the council president knew that all 5 people did not have an appetite for speed cameras when 2 of them had not spoken at all and 1 had only asked a question. So is this a point where I can get an answer to that, or should I go on to my next point?
Lorraine, did you hear me speak out? And
Yes, I did. I said 1 council person spoke and had an opinion and expressed it.
Gotcha. Sorry.
2 were silent, and 1 only asked questions but expressed no opinion.
Thank you.
Including the president, but who then spoke for all 5 people, and there was no vote taken.
So Lori, I'm going to answer this question. And so by not voting it down, we preserve our ability to bring it back. In the event we took a vote and the majority was that we do not want to do it, someone on the prevailing side, someone on the majority would have to take action to put it back on an agenda at a subsequent meeting. We don't have that restriction right now. So we allow for flexibility in the future now.
Okay,
That's what occurred.
okay. So will it
And no
be
one contested
considered-
what the president said either.
I'm sorry?
No one up here contested what the president said.
Correct.
And sometimes the questions
Yes.
indicate how people feel.
Okay. Even when they're silent. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm kind of new at this, and I don't really understand, and I understand what you're saying now, that you're preserving it. The other question I had was why there was no public comment allowed on that topic. I was the one who requested a speed camera in February, I think, in a letter to the council.
Question.
So I had asked for it, and I was never allowed to speak or address it at the time, and I wondered if that is also standard procedure, or if there's something else that I should have done differently or can do differently next time.
Well, Lori, we heard from you at the last meeting. We heard from you at prior meetings, obviously different topics, more specific this time and more specific to something else the other time. But we feel this was an opportunity to allow the chief to speak on it.
Right.
You expressed your position, your perspective.
Not on his report, but okay, okay, so it's your prerogative whether or not to allow public comment?
So
Is that?
I'm just going to, I motion to add it to the agenda, because Jay said something, I've said something, Mike said something, we're up to 4 people.
Well, I asked a question.
Right, but we can't all interact with her.
Go ahead, add it to the agenda.
Motion to add item 14.
All right, there has to be a second to advance this item to the
Whatever
agenda.
this is.
Is there a second?
Sorry, never mind. We're in public comment. My brain is not here today.
Lori, we'll toll your time, so feel free to speak. I know you got a minute and 15.
No, I just have one other comment. So that was it. Why was there no vote? Why was there no public comment? And my third observation, which I would have made had there been public comment at the time, is that the only comment that I heard, the summary of Mr. Wegemont's remarks, was that he would rather see the cameras for 365 days a year than just 9 months. So to me, why not go with what we can do?
Exactly.
What is the downside to cameras? That some people who are speeding might get a civil notice and a fine? What is the downside? We have an obvious problem with speeding in school districts. We have a free and easy solution to it, to change people's habits, to get people to realize, hey, this is a school zone, I need to slow down. To me, this is a no-brainer, whether we've got a problem on Kersey Road or not. What is the objection to having people change their patterns and start going within 11 miles of the speed limit? Well, that's my public comment. And I hope to, the other comment is that on the agenda, it said that you were also going to have an update on the Patty Hill sidewalks. That was in the agenda. Not a word was spoken. I haven't heard anything tonight about it. I haven't heard anything outside of the meeting. I still don't know where we stand on the crosswalk and sidewalk issue. But it was in the agenda and it was not brought up at the time.
So there is 14B and C, the emails from Cynthia Harney about...
Yes, but that was rolled into the whatever the other item was. Stated when we got to the speed camera issue, it said that you were rolling those 2 letters into that item number. I'm sorry, I'm not really clear on procedure, and I don't know how that works, but it was
11B.
stated that those 2 letters were being rolled in.
Lori, I think what we had said at the end of that item was that we hope the chief can continue to work on different traffic calming measures around town, but specifically as it relates to Kersey Road, because we know that you brought it to our attention. I identified that there was a crosswalk potential solution. It appeared close, But at the last time we met, 2 meetings ago, it didn't seem like we could get over that finish line with respect to that. So I'm hopeful in what I said
I
to the
think
directors.
it was 4 weeks ago, and I still haven't heard. So I'm just
I'm
bringing
referring to
it up.
comments I made on the record tonight. But I think that's going to conclude it for this.
Okay, I'm just bringing it up again because I'm just bringing it up again.
So
I still don't have an update.
we did talk a lot at the most recent meeting about the crosswalk, and as I recalled, we decided that the kids could walk down to where the crosswalk is and cross that way and then walk up. So it would make them go, like a few feet in the opposite direction to get to the crosswalk. And so there is a crosswalk there, but
There's a
we just
crosswalk on
got-
the other side of the school. I'm sorry, I'm not following what you're saying.
So
All right, I think we should end it there. Otherwise, we'll need to
Okay.
add this to the
Yeah,
agenda.
yeah.
We're getting
Okay.
into length with substance.
Okay, I'll have to, should I call the clerk and ask how to get this
I would
on
continue
the
to work
agenda
with Rich
again?
Bourbonnais. It seems like you were close, and in the event you're having continual troubles, bring it back up at a later date.
Okay,
We want to help you.
okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, that's going to move us to communications item 14A. An email dated April 14, 2026 from Dorothy Hill, Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee Chair, requesting that the town council support House Bill H8298 relative to a 2026 bond referendum relating to the Capital Development Program for $25 million for the Bicycle Mobility Plan. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve a resolution of the council in support of H8298 for the $25 million bicycle mobility plan.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second, any discussion?
Just brief, please.
I just want to say one of the topics that we've hit in the last few months is rethinking how we approach bicycles, because we've had a couple of people now come up and talk about this as transportation. And I think long-term, we need to start incorporating that thought, and if there's an opportunity for bond money to improve our infrastructure that way, I think we should.
I agree with you, Mr. Vice President. And thank you to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee for bringing this forward. I was speaking to a town employee this week, and I ran into getting coffee, and he bicycles everywhere to work, to work for the town. And I think that this is a great opportunity for us to tap into some of those funds to increase transportation on, with bicycles. So, pretty good.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to the end here. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Oh, wait, before we do that, are there any thoughts, comments, council members? Go ahead.
Just very briefly, I wanted to wish my girlfriend, Clara Crawford, a happy birthday sitting at home. It's her birthday today, so happy birthday, Clara. And it's been a great day celebrating with you. So, thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. This meeting is over. See you next time.